Well, I think it's time to get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. For those of you who are joining me, absolutely love it. Love to see some people that are joining us here live on my workshop, on my monthly office hours. I am looking forward to sharing some stuff with you, some new stuff, and kind of hot off the presses type stuff. So I'm very much looking forward to sharing this with you. I'd love to hear any questions that you've got, etc. So I thought I'd go ahead and just dive in. And well, actually, you know what? We just started here the hour, and I want to give people another minute or so. Let's just see, now that we've fired this up, let me just take a look and see, make sure we got people that are connected. Just to make sure that I can see people have connected just fine. So if you are on, I'll ask you this. If you are on, if you're joining me on LinkedIn or on YouTube or on Voitanos Live, if you wouldn't mind just dropping a comment in the chat and just let me know that you can see and hear me. And, sound off. Where's everybody connecting from? I'm here in Northeast Florida in the United States, a little place called St. John's, and that's me. I guess I'm here. So as I'm kind of going through this, I see we got somebody on YouTube just saying everything is good. Let me double check over here on, let me make sure also one other thing is done. I missed that. I meant to do that before we started. I'm going to do it right now. Cool. Okay. Let's see. We got a couple people from YouTube. Awesome. Anybody who is connecting from LinkedIn Live, would love to know if you are also hearing and seeing everything just fine. So hopefully everything's good. And thankfully, the Cloudflare outage that was going on this morning, thankfully that was resolved seems like about 30 or 45 minutes prior to our office hours kicking off. It was a lot of fun because it was completely shut down our student platform, as that has some Cloudflare stuff that I use for that. All my DNS is in Cloudflare. So yeah, it was causing a little bit of a challenge there, but hey, all good. We're good now. Got people connecting, so we're all good. So for those of you who are new and joining me today for the first time with my office hours, or if you're watching the recording of this at a later time, let me just kind of real quickly explain kind of what I like to do with these office hours. I hold these once a month. These are, I hold them generally on the third Tuesday of the month. So that would be today. And since we're going to spend the next, hour-ish, then I figured let's take a minute here, and you should kind of know who you're going to be spending some time with. My name is Andrew Connell. I'm a developer, instructor, writer, speaker, also an M365 developer coach / fractional project guidance, or what do you call it? Fractional Microsoft 365 subject matter expert for your organization. I've been an MVP with Microsoft for over 21 years. And you can see some information there on the left-hand side about how to contact me and follow me on LinkedIn and on YouTube and on Blue Sky, where I'm most active. I focus primarily in the developer space when it comes to Microsoft's modern work. So that involves Microsoft 365, SharePoint, which includes SharePoint Framework, SharePoint Embedded. I'm an old school SharePoint developer going back to September of 2003, 22 some odd years ago. I also do a lot of work with Teams, building apps for Microsoft Teams, chatbots, message extensions, agents. Also work with and extend working with stuff on Microsoft 365 Copilot. Got a fun workshop or full day tutorial coming up in a couple of weeks at the European SharePoint Conference in Dublin, Ireland. Where myself and Mark Rackley, my co-presenter, are doing a full day workshop, kind of going back and forth on what you can do with Copilot Studio and what does it look like if you're doing it with VS Code as a declarative agent. We've got over 100 people registered for that workshop, so we're really looking forward to it. So I don't know if any of you who are tuning in, if you're going to be in Dublin for the conference, please reach out. Love to meet people in person. So I'll be there. I'm looking forward to it. I see, let's see, Don's joining us. Welcome, Don. I see Savvy. Hello. Good to see you again. Kiki. I see Kiki's connected, and I can see a lot more people are connected, but they don't have their names. They're not chiming in. That's all good. No worries at all. Again, if you have connected, you're watching live here, we'd love it if you would just drop a message in the chat. Just say, hey, I'm connecting from here, whatever. The other stuff that I'm going to throw out here too. So a couple of things. I'm a founder of a company called Voitanos, where I do education around Microsoft 365 development topics. That includes things like, courses, live workshops. I got a live workshop coming up in December on Copilot. See some people got their hands raised. I'm not going to do anything over audio. So if you have a question, if you would drop it in the Q&A part of the live stream. If you're on LinkedIn or you're on YouTube, you can drop it in the chat. The priority goes to people who are on LinkedIn Live, who are on my Voitanos Learn platform and live streaming from there. So make sure you put your questions there. So I see one person's got their hand up in Voitanos Learn. Please, again, make sure you put your stuff in the Q&A panel, because that's where I'll see that's where I answer the questions. We're not going to do anything over the audio first. I'm going to do a little bit of kind of walk through some stuff and then answer questions that you have as they come up. All right. Let's see here. So I'm just going to put one hand down, lower your hand. There we go. All right. There we go. Okay. I also have a podcast I co-host with a good friend of mine, Julie Turner, where we're going to talk about a little bit of this same topic that we're going over today. We're going to talk about it in our next episode, which drops tomorrow. We recorded an episode last week, and I'm looking forward to publishing that one tomorrow. As I said, I've been a long-time MVP, and then I also have a bi-weekly newsletter called the Fullstack Developers Microsoft 365 Playbook that I'm probably going to rename in the next few weeks. So we'll see what you guys think about that. One thing I will say is, if you are interested, I'm actually looking forward to later this week publishing the details about our year-end sale that we are going to that's going to start on Black Friday. So a week from this coming Friday. So that would be on Friday, November the 28th, and it will run through the following week. So it'll run for 1 week. So covering Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, you name it. There will be some special deals and bonuses and stuff, and got a few new things that I'm looking forward to sharing with everybody. So if you go to my site and you subscribe to my newsletter, you will get an email with all the information about that. And I'll also have an article posted about it as well. And don't worry, if you decide that there's nothing there for you, there's a way that you can easily just opt out of getting any of the other emails. So I'll send a handful of emails out about it, and over the next, I guess it's a total of 3 weeks. So with that, for those of you who are here and you're joining me for the very first time, what do I normally do with these office hours? Well, what I like to normally do is to kind of go over what's new in Microsoft 365 from a developer's point of view, what's new on when it comes to SharePoint Framework, what's new when it comes to Microsoft Teams development, and what's new when it comes to Microsoft 365 Copilot. I'm not going to do any of that today. For the first time, we're not doing that today. And instead today, we got a single theme that I'm going to focus on, and that is going over a huge change to the SharePoint framework that is coming in the next release of the SharePoint framework, version 1.22. The gist of what they are doing, we're going to do like no slides. We're going to go straight into like demos and kind of walk through stuff. The gist of what they are doing with this is that they are dropping Gulp. They're removing Gulp from the tool chain, and they are replacing it with something called Heft, which serves a similar purpose. Fundamentally, you can think about it as like the same thing, but architecturally, it's very, very different. And the customization and extensibility story is very, very different. I've been living in this for the last, actually, I've been working on this with Microsoft since June of this year, and really started spending a lot more time on it. and helping them understand the challenges that I think developers are going to face, evangelizing and advocating the things that I've seen from my students and from my customers back to Microsoft and saying, you've got to address this. You've got to address this. If you do this, this is not going to be good. I like this. Let's kind of change this up. I think you should change this up. So it's not like I've been telling them what to do. It's just been a very good discussion back and forth for the last few months, I guess about 4 or 5 months now. And over the last month or so, maybe 4 to 6 weeks or so, there's a group that Microsoft announced last month called I think it's I just forgot, the Community Advisory Council or Advisory Board or something. There's 11 people who are Microsoft MVPs that we work directly with the SharePoint Framework team and give them feedback and review and discuss ideas and stuff like that back and forth. So a lot of things changed before we got to that point. And then thankfully, we're going to go through a lot of this today. This is by far, I've been doing the SharePoint Framework since before they even wrote a line of code for it, going all the way back to 2016, way before it even was released in February of 2017. I can tell you that in the last 8 years, this is by far going to be the biggest change to the SharePoint Framework that you have ever seen. In fact, it is going to affect every single project that you do. Now, nothing is going to break when you first go through and create your project. All right, nothing is going to break to any of your existing projects. Let me just state that right off the bat. All right, when 1.22 comes out, you're good. If this version that is going to release, so right now we're at beta 5. When the 1.22 release of beta 5 comes out, when the GA release comes out, which I would expect it's going to be sometime in December when we'll see that, we will have a release candidate that will come out, and we may have multiple of those. But the intent of a release candidate is basically saying, this is GA. This is GA quality. We're done. But if you find something, let us know so that we can fix it before we go GA. I expect another release candidate as early as tomorrow, November the 19th, or maybe even as late as like next week. But it's going to be, it's really coming up. And I know there's a few changes that we'll see in the release candidate compared to what I'm going to show you today. But it's nothing major or too significant for what I'm going to run through today. When this is released, I want to level set a few things here, and then we're going to kind of walk through what is it, how does it work, and then how do you customize it, all right? Because that's a big piece of the stuff I've been working on. I've been working on a bunch of documentation that's going to be published most likely later today. There is an open PR as of about an hour or two ago that I've opened up with all of my changes, and I'm going through and we're going to have to do a lot of as expected, there's a bunch of findings that the automated build checks that Microsoft uses have found, and I'm going through my punch list on those right now. It should be public or live in the documentation by the time you wake up tomorrow, I guess. And then you may even see some other updates coming on over the next few days and stuff as we potentially find stuff. When the GA version of 1.22 comes out, the only 2 things that it includes no new features. It includes no upgrades of any of our dependencies that you would be that you're hoping for, like React. No change there. There is an upgrade to TypeScript, but there is no change to there's no change to React. Basically nothing is going to impact anything in your source folder. Nothing. This is strictly a release that I would call like a maintenance or a infrastructure release, and it is only affecting the build toolchain. 2 things it does. First is they are doing their absolute best on eliminating all of the audit findings that you get when you do an NPM audit. So when you do a new project and it says, this many things are deprecated, this many things are severe, this many things are intermediate, they are doing their best to get that down to 0. Now, They keep saying that they're going to squash all of them, but let's just be real here. That's going to maybe be true on day one, and then something could change, and we could have a few more pop up over time. But it's just that we'll be in a much better state. Like I think when we first started this, we were around 179 audit findings, and we're now down to somewhere around, I know we're down below like 15 or 14 or something, but it may even be lower than that. At one point it was at 0, and then there was an updated dependency that hit there, and it was like, so we'll see. But they're going to get pretty close. That's one thing they're doing. The big thing though that I'm going to focus on today is that they're removing Gulp from the entire tool chain as our task runner or task orchestrator, and they're replacing it with a tool called Heft. Now, you don't have to upgrade to 1.22. Let me just be clear. You don't have to upgrade to 1.22. But everything after this release is going to be based on this release. So it is, in my opinion, it is in your best interest to upgrade to 1.22 when you have time, because when a new features release, like a new version of React is supported, or something else gets added, like in the next version of SPFx, which they've got 2 of them that they've already listed on the roadmap, the public roadmap for the first half of next year, you are going to have to take into account all of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today. All right. When you do the upgrade, it is a bigger deal than a normal project upgrade, because you're not just going to be upgrading your project, like everything in the dependency section. You're also going to be upgrading a ton of your dev dependencies, because you are literally ripping out the old tool chain and replacing it with a brand new one. If you have made no changes to your tool chain, this process should be pretty easy for you. All right. But if you've made any changes to your build tool chain, for example, or in other words, if you have made any changes inside of gulpfile.js, you absolutely will have to migrate them without a doubt. Gulpfile.js is never going to be called again in the new tool chain. You essentially could delete that file. All right. So in fact, in my migration article, it says, don't delete it yet. Make sure that once you've migrated everything over, then you still got everything in Gulp file that you need to go migrate. I've got articles that are going to be published later today in the SharePoint Framework official documentation on learn.microsoft.com that goes over, in my mind, all of the scenarios that you could run into that I'm going to run through today in terms of the customizations. But let me be very clear. If you've got a scenario that's not covered by one of these ones I've done, let me know. Leave a comment on this video where you're watching this, either on my site where the recording will be posted, on YouTube Live where the recording is going to be posted, on Voitanos Live, on YouTube Live where the recording is posted, in the SPFx documentation site, the SPDevDocs repo. Let us know. We are intentionally not going too heavy on some of the changes, because we want to make sure that I want to respond to feedback. And that's why we're also publishing this either at or before the release candidate comes out. All right. So everybody's still with me. Give me a little bit of feedback here. Give me some warm fuzzies. Let me know if you're still here. People are still alive. Make sure that there's nobody's kind of fallen off or anything, so we can start diving into this and see what's going on. All right. So I'd like to see something here. I still see nobody saying anything. So hopefully it's just the delay and Cloudflare hasn't died again. So here's how this works. When you go to create a brand new project, Adam, oh sweet, Adam's here, Anthony's here, sweet, awesome, cool. All right, so here's how this goes. I've got a bunch of different projects here that I can show you. Now, let's go through and let me just show you what the migration looks like. When you go through and you do a big update, and again, there'll be articles about this that walk through it step by step. And if you want to see, like, if you're overly eager and you just can't wait, if you go to github.microsoft.com to SharePoint/SPDevDocs, if you go to this GitHub repo right here and you go to pull requests, you will find this pull request number 1048. 1048 was 10488. I'll get there. 10488. If you go to this PR, you will find a list of all the changes. Now, there's a lot of stuff that's here. So let me go through and let me just post this PR in the chat. Okay. Oh, I was on the wrong tab. Look at that. Look at all, there are a bunch of people here. Sweet. Okay, my bad. You can see all the stuff that's in this, and there's a bunch of things where you'll see all the files have changed. And I kind of walk through here. What are all the different scenarios here? So here are the scenarios. I'm gonna talk about the migration, but let me talk about the customization scenarios that we're going to cover, and I'll explain all of them in our webinar today. And again, got questions? Put them in. If you're in Voitanos Learn, you guys get priority on all the questions. So post your question in the question and answer panel in the Voitanos Learn live stream that we have on Circle. I'll keep an eye on those. If you're watching on LinkedIn, if you're watching on YouTube, if you're watching on Facebook, put them in the chat, but I'm going to focus. I'm only going to go over there. I'm going to try and go over there when if nobody else is asking any questions, all right? So I'll go through the migration first. But let me just explain what are the customization scenarios. In my mind, when you look at all the different toolchain customizations that we have done with the SharePoint framework going back the last 8 years, they fall into two categories. So the first category is I made a change to my Webpack configuration. And usually you're doing that by adding or modifying a Webpack plugin. So Webpack Bundle Analyzer, don't worry, I got demos on that. The Define plugin, those are the kinds of things that I see a lot of people end up doing. The other thing that we end up doing is we have some sort of arbitrary code that we have to run. And we do that usually by creating a custom task for Gulp, a custom Gulp task that's going to run some code. Now, both of those things are always done inside of gulpfile.js. So what are we end up doing? Well, couple different scenarios. Like I said, you're going to the ways you're going to do this is by customizing the toolchain by modifying configuration files for your existing for the plugins. I'll explain what plugins are and tasks and all that kind of stuff as far as Heft goes in just a minute. I will show you how to then use existing out-of-the-box plugins that Heft gives us in your SPFx project and how you can modify the toolchain to use it. I'm also, the other story is, obviously I can't spell arbitrary. It doesn't matter though. How do I run arbitrary code as part of my toolchain like I would if I was doing a Gulp task? But what if I also want to do like a Webpack configuration and modify the Webpack configuration like a plugin? I'll show you how to do that. And then I'm going to call this the YOLO mode. This is ejecting from the toolchain. I'm going to show you how to do it. The docs really try and steer you away from doing this. I will tell you, this is your option of last resort. It is an extreme option. Consider this voiding your warranty. So you can do it, but I think it is a bad idea. And if you're doing it in a repeatable thing, one person that's watching right now has heard me say this. We want to know. Microsoft wants to know. I want to know, why are you ejecting? Because so far, I haven't seen a scenario where you would have to eject. Early on, I saw a lot, but they've done some stuff to really make it easier for us so that you don't run into that. All right, well, you won't need that. So let's go through and let's take a look at what happens here. So when you create a brand new SharePoint Framework project, all right, let's go to, all right, so I'm going to go through, I've done this, your initial project. So when I go create, let's not use that. Let's not use that option. Let's use this. So when you go create a brand new SPFx project, you know what, let's do it like this. And how about you put me in the corner? Give us some more space. All right, hopefully that's better. So this is just your out-of-the-box, brand new SPFx project that you've created using SPFx 1.21.1. All right, so all of our migration stuff is based on 1.21.1, the latest current GA version. So what's involved in going through the migration? The first thing you're going to do is you're going to uninstall the entire Gulp toolchain. And what that involves is you will be removing, if you scroll down here, just look at the dev dependencies. Now, it gets a little jacked up on us because it resorts stuff. And so some of these things, it's going to look like everything has changed. It looks a little bit nastier than it really is. But let me just explain. Let me tell you what's going on here. So the big thing you're going to see is that there are some plugins that are going to be removed that we are no longer using. So like right here, this gets a little confusing. This gets a little confusing right here between ESLint config SPFx, but there it is again, same version. Why does it look different? It's whatever. Couple things you're going to do. You are going to remove the RushStack compiler that is tied to the version of TypeScript that you're currently using. We're not going to need that anymore. You are also going to remove the build web package, and you're going to remove the module interfaces package. Oh, sorry, you're not going to remove that one. You're going to remove, let's say that one more time. You're going to remove the build web. So that's the entire build toolchain for Gulp. You're going to remove Gulp, and you're going to remove this thing called AJV. All right. And then you're also going to uninstall the RushStack compiler. And the number you see on the end here is going to be based on whatever version of TypeScript you're using. So I was using TypeScript 5.3, which is what our default version was in a new SPFx 1.21.1 project. So mine is using 5.3. So I'm uninstalling 5.3. If you were using an older one like TypeScript 4.7, you would see RushStack compiler -4.7. So that's step one. That's what you're going to do to remove the entire Gulp toolchain. That's step one. All right. Then you're going to install the Heft toolchain. So that involves installing a lot of stuff. So what you'll see here is that you see these old ones that we've got listed here about 1.21. We are going to be installing all of these new ones. So you're going to be installing, well, these guys are just upgrades from the previous packages. So these ESLint config, SPFx, plugin SPFx, and ESLint config, those are all like going to be updated. You're going to install the Heft package. You're going to install the SPFx Heft plugins and the SPFx build rig right here. All right. You don't need the CSS loader or overrides. It looks like those are no longer going to be required. Those are not in my migration doc. So that's some of the stuff you're going to be using to go install this to get this guy upgraded. After you do that, then obviously you're going to have to upgrade your SharePoint Framework project, not just the dev toolchain stuff, but the actual project to the new version 1.22. So in my case here, so like these are all the production dependencies. You then are going to upgrade all of those to whatever the current 1.22 is. All right, that's kind of obvious. All right, don't worry about taking notes on this. It's going to be a walkthrough in a doc. All right, then there's some files you're going to have to update here. So your gulp file.js, this guy you can delete. Now, if you've got a bunch of customizations in it, you don't want to delete it yet because you want to go through and migrate those after you've done after you've gotten rid of Gulp and installed Heft and upgraded your project. Now you want to take those toolchain customizations and migrate them to Heft-based customizations. And then once that's done, you can get rid of gulp file.js. One change you're going to end up doing is that in your TS config, you're going to wipe out everything and say, I want to base this, my TypeScript compiler command line changes. I want to put all of that stuff over to use whatever's coming from the default build rig. Okay. So that's where you want to go through. You're going to want to end up defining that. All right. Let's see. I just saw a question pop up. Let me come back to that. Yeah, I see your question, Michael and Don. I'll come back to that. All right, and then you're going to be adding in a TypeScript.json file and a rig.json file. We'll come back to. I'll explain what those are in just a bit. And then you're going to modify the Sass file to say you're going to modify the Sass file that today it just points to a specific schema. You're going to change the schema it goes to. I'll explain that in a sec. And you're going to tell it to extend a new configuration file, right? Or an existing configuration file that's already there as part of the tool chain. Okay, that's what the migration looks like. And then you're going to go in and update your production dependencies, and they're going to update your scripts. All of the script section is here is it just cleans up like what build, clean, and test we used to call gulp build, gulp bundle, gulp clean, gulp test. Now it's Heft build, Heft test, Heft clean. You'll notice a few of the names change from some of our actions. You'll notice there's no bundle anymore. Why? Well, if you think back, a build and a bundle, why were those separate tasks? Doesn't make sense. because you would never just compile and then never bundle it. You always use Webpack, either in dev or production. So now you will always, bundling is running Webpack is part of the build process, okay? The other thing that you're gonna see is that what we used to call gulp serve is now start, right? Same concept though. We're still spinning it up, local server, using a hosted workbench, etc. One big change you will see though is this package solution. We are dropping the -- ship argument, and it's being replaced with -- production. I always thought that was already kind of done. I know the -p was a replacement for -- ship, but regardless. Okay, so other stuff is very similar. You'll see a bunch of stuff. Ejecting Webpack. Ooh, we'll see what that is in a sec. What I would recommend you do is install Heft globally as well. There's no Heft CLI like gulp -CLI. That doesn't exist. That's not necessary. That was an issue Gulp had. Heft, you just install, it's going to be part of your project, and you're going to also install, you can also install Heft globally, or you can just run it using instead of using, installing it globally, you can use npx, like, instead of going like, saying npm install rushstack heft, can't spell, look at that, -g for global. You can just run it without installing it by going npx heft, like that. All right, and it would run that way, okay? Now, actually, no, it won't. You got to say at rushstack. Ooh, I got to fix my docs. Do I? I thought I tested that. npx heft -h. It does work. Maybe because I have it installed globally already. I don't know. I better double check that. Footnote. All right. So now let me answer a couple of questions I see that I got here, and let me start walking through like how does this whole thing work, and we'll look at a brand new SPFx project. Actually, we'll use the migration project here. So I saw Michael said, what is the background on the reason for the shift from Heft to Heft from Gulp? So dirty little secret. So the SharePoint Framework originally was using Gulp, and it was basing its tool chain off of a bunch of other stuff that Microsoft had created for node-based projects. Years later, they decided they wanted to have more control over their tool chain. So this was I can't remember when this was, but a couple of years ago, they forked off of that tool chain. So the SharePoint Framework guys did, and they created their own kind of customized version of the tool chain where they could go through and not be dependent upon these guys. That's what you might see referred to as like the Gulp core build package. That's what this is. As it kind of went like that, the reason why the NPM audits and were getting like growing, we were getting so many more coming up, was that the SharePoint Framework team was responsible for SharePoint Framework and their build tool chain and all their dependencies that they'd inherited from these guys, but they couldn't just go through and go through and merge those changes because they'd made a significant fork. So they were stuck. So part of this is for them to kind of bring things back together, but also part of it is that Gulp is old, and the Heft tool chain is much more configurable. And so Microsoft did this primarily to help them. Internally, they've been using this Heft tool chain that we're using now. They've been using it for their first party SharePoint Framework stuff. We've been using a different tool chain in the public. We've been using a third party tool chain that uses Gulp. This says we're going to bring it all together, right? So it's basically they're fixing their problem and it's forcing it on us, and we have to go through an upgrade. So it kind of sucks, but we're getting there, all right? Let me see. So I see a couple comments here about installing Heft globally. Somebody said you don't have to do it. Yeah, you don't have to install Heft globally, but the challenge is that if you don't install it globally, if you don't use like the npx option, you will always have to either to prefix it with like, when you go to run it, say like /node modules /bin/heft space and whatever the command is, or you have to add an npm script that does that. And you'll find that you do want to install it globally. I think you do. It's not a requirement. It's my recommendation. So take it for what it's worth of me just working with this thing for the last few months. Don says, do you know if the CLI Microsoft 365 guys are preparing the project upgrade command? I don't have any clue on what they're doing. I've not spoken to them at all. I've been focused on the customization story. I'll let somebody else deal with the upgrade. That's not my problem. I was working on other stuff. I do have the migration guide done because the docs are going to definitely go through it. But yeah, I don't know what they're doing. So I touch base on them. And then Don says, so yeah, okay. So Don's just basically commenting on what Michael said. Okay, cool. Let's see. Let me just see a couple of things here. So I've already answered some of those questions real quick. Peter, I would use the other commands that you're seeing right now. When you use gulps, when you do hef start, it actually runs the watch command, the build watch command for you under the covers. Just looking at the chat here real quick. Anthony, I see about customizing TS config file. I'll talk about that in just a second. Oh, I see Adam in the YouTube chat is saying things that the CLI that yes, they are going through and they're making some changes to the CLI to go through and upgrade it. And there'll be an update in the SPFx toolkit as well to support the upgrade path. Okay, so let's go back to the code here because we only got I may go a little long today here because I want to show you guys this stuff. So let me just explain how this works, and then we'll look at some of the customizations here. So under the covers, what's going on? All right, when you look at the package.json, it's got all these different things you see is calling heft. What is heft doing? When you run heft, think about heft as just like gulp. What heft is doing is it's looking for a heft configuration that defines what is available to me. So gulp has tasks. In heft, we have things called actions or commands. So if I make this guy bigger, which of course I can't see it because my camera's here, so let's flip it up here and then go back down here. What you'll see is when I run the heft-h command, you'll see a list of all of these commands. And sometimes you will see a command that has a matched -watch part to go along with it. Most of the time you're going to see that. That is just something heft does. When we define one of these commands, we're technically defining something called a phase, right? So we'll see what that is in a minute. It also is going to create a watch command that allows us to say hey, watch these files and restart this if these files change. It's just a thing that heft does. So when heft runs, it's looking for something called a heft configuration file. That's going to be inside your config folder, usually called heft.json. But you don't see that here. Why? The reason why is because we can have a pre-configured toolchain configuration and we can wrap it up into something called a rig. A rig can have one or more profiles, named profiles. One of them would be the default profile. And what you can do is you can add in your own, you can add in all the different things that you want this to be able to do. All right. You can then take that rig, package it up into an NPM package and publish it for other people to use. What is cool about this? My package.json file doesn't get littered with a bunch of junk. So if I look at what heft does, it says, I'm looking for a heft.json file. Where is it? It doesn't see it. It then says, are there any rigs that are available? And the answer is yes. Where is it? This rig is defined is in a package called @Microsoft SPFx build web build rig. And it also can define the name of the profile. If I don't specify the profile, as you can see from the code comment here in IntelliSense, it's saying it's going to use the default profile. Okay, cool. So let's go look at this rig. I will find that inside of my node modules under Microsoft, and then I will find the SPFx build rig, and inside of the profiles collection, I will find a config folder, which is going to be our default profile, and we find our heft.json. What does this have? This guy has two properties on it. The one you're interested in is phases by name. What phases by name is going to have a list of all of the phases that can be run by heft. These look familiar. Each phase, we also call these actions or commands. So this is like a task inside of Gulp. Each phase is going to have a description associated with it. Forget about clean files. It's a little bit, we don't need to go that deep in it. They will have a section called tasks by name. The way heft works is that it's looking for a configuration. If it can't find the configuration, it looks for the rig. If it finds, when it finds the rig that it's supposed to use, it looks at that rig's configuration defined in the heft.json. When it finds that, it tells it everything that it can do in this phase. When I then call heft space build to go run the build phase, what that does then is it's going to use all of these different tasks that are defined. For example, it's going to run the SAS, a task that I've called SAS. This is a user-defined name. So line 41, this is something that they made up. The name is made up. The phases and the phases are made up. The task names are made up. This task of SAS, what does it do? Well, first, it requires another task to complete before it runs. So it's got dependencies. Then, where is this task? Where's it defined? It is in a plugin package called Heft SAS plugin. Heft ships with a handful of out-of-the-box plugins already. These plugins contain tasks. A task is something that's going to be done. So, for example, there is a SAS task that will compile all of our CSS files over to JSON. Sometimes when you look at these different tasks, they have, let me see if I can find one. He won't have one. He might. Yes, he does. You will find a task that has an options property. This option property is allowing me to configure any inputs that I have on that task, right? So any settings that we have. But you'll notice that some of these tasks don't have settings, like SAS in TypeScript. Oh, but they do. If heft doesn't see these options defined inside where the plugin is defined here, think about if I had multiple phases using the same task and they all use the same configuration. Pain in the butt, right? Well, check it out. The SAS configuration will be found inside of SAS JSON. This is all the stuff that it can use to go modify this. So in my default project, how does it work? Well, if I look at the SAS JSON, you see that I'm inheriting from that SAS config file inside of the default build rig. If I don't make any changes to it, it'll use that, but I'm extending it. So if I wanted to come in here and say, I don't want it to compile the SCSS files, then I just come over here into my config and I overwrite that property like that. And now SCSS files will not be compiled by the SAS compiler. Same thing is true for my TypeScript configuration as well. I saw Anthony asked earlier, what if I've made changes to tsconfig.json and I want to, am I going to have to modify those? If you look at tsconfig.json, it extends an out-of-the-box configuration from the build rig. If you want to make changes to it and override those, you do it the same way here. All right. I think I just answered somebody's question, Eric's question that just popped up in the chat. Okay, so now you're getting a feel for how this works. We got our rig, we got our configuration, we've got phases, and we've got tasks. Okay, cool. That's just how it works. You can go through and start picking that apart and learning and seeing how to do like modifications with it and make changes. What if I wanted to make a change to the out-of-the-box rig that we have here? If I want to make a change to the out-of-the-box rig, so say, for example, I wanted to change what happens when let's think about this for a second. Let's say I want to make a change to the package solution phase that I wanted when let's look at that out of the box. Let's look at that rig, the rig definition right here. So what does it do? I want to look for the package solution phase. We're going to show you a couple examples here. We're going to modify build and we're going to modify package solution. So here's package solution. Package solution, that phase uses a task called package solution. Where will you find that? You'll find that as a plugin called package solution plugin. You want to see the code for this? Check this out. Where is it? It's inside of the Microsoft SPFx Heft plugins. Oh, look, there it is right there in my node modules. It's a plugin called package solution plugin. Oh, look, ESM plugins, package solution plugin. Let's open him up. Let's make sure, what is his name of the plugin? Oh, there it is right there. Oops, damn IntelliSense. It's coming from plugin names. Go up a little bit. Plugin names. Ah, cool. There it is. Got it. Now I understand where these things are all going to be named. Okay, so I want to make a change to how this package solution works. Let's say I want to copy a file. After I've done my heft space package dash solution, and I want to go through and make a change to, I want to do something like copy a file. How do I do that? Well, here's what you would do. What I want to do is I want to modify the configuration, because what I really want to have happen is I now have this file called license.md. And what I want to have happen is that whenever I build my project, it copies this file from here to here. And you're wondering, why would you do that? I'm like, I don't know. It's a demo. Back off. Just trying to give you an example. So I just want to copy this file down here. There's a weird thing about this, but I'll show you how this works. So if I come back over here to config, what I want to do is I'm still inheriting from the rig, no changes. But what I want to do is I want to make a change to it. So Rush or Heft is going to look for, as I said earlier, it's going to look for its heft.json file for the config. Cool. So when it does this, what am I saying? Well, when you open this guy up, I want you to extend the configuration of the current rig. Does that mean I can delete rig.json? The docs say no. My experience says don't do it. Basically, there's other stuff that depends on it. So don't delete this rig.json file. You should leave it there. Why? Because it breaks. What happens if I delete it? It breaks. How do I fix it? You put it back. It's like going to the doctor. It hurts when I touch it. Doctor says, stop touching it, right? That's just, I'm pragmatic. But what I want to do is I want to make a change to that phase because I want to add another step to it. I want to add another task. So how do I do that? Well, I'm going to define a new phases by name section. And I'm going to say, I want to go modify the existing package solution phase. He has tasks. Notice I have a new task that I'm defining called copy license. I made that up, but I'm not changing the package solution task. The fact that package solution is both a phase name and a task name is just a coincidence. Probably a bad coincidence, but it is a coincidence. There are things that you can make up. All right. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to define a new task called copy license. I want it to run after package solution runs. Okay, what task do I want to use? I want to use a task coming from the plugin that's in the RushStack Heft package, and that is called Copy Files plugin. You can look in the Rush documentation. I've got links to it in the docs that'll point to some of the out-of-the-box tasks that we have. We have copy files, delete files, set environment variables, and a couple other things as well. TypeScript, Sass, tasks. Those are ones that we're using out of the box. There's a Node.js for running a service, like a web server that we need to serve up to the hosted workbench or to SharePoint and hosted SharePoint. This Copy Files plugin has options. What options? It has a property called Copy Operations. And so I give it an array of objects. There's a bunch of properties you can set. I've chosen to set it this way. I basically say whenever you run this, I want you to copy files, specifically files from the assets folder to the solution folder. Which file? License.md, but it's a glob pattern. So now when I come into my project and I say heft package solution, it breaks, which it didn't before, damn it. What did you not like? No manifests were found in dist. Oh, because I have to do a heft build first. Duh. So you can see it's doing a build. You can see also, notice the left-hand side of this of the logging. Left-hand side is the name of the phase. Right-hand side is the name of the task, that the user-defined task. And then there's all these different commands coming out at the end. So now when I run my package solution, you will now see the last thing after it did was it copied one file from the phase package solution, and my task was named copy license. It copied that over, that file over. Okay, cool. So I can take an existing task and I can use it and customize the tool chain inside this project. Cool. I like that. All right. What's another scenario that I want to do? Well, what if you wanted to run arbitrary code? Anybody ever want to lint their CSS, their style sheets? Right? There was a common way of doing this. We used to do this. This guy. Nope, not there. There. We used to do this using a custom gulp task that was available from the community called gulp-style-lint. So here's what I've done. What I've done is I've decided, I'm like, there's no plugin. There will be. Stay tuned. There is a oh my God, hold on. What was I going to say here? In order to do this, I've looked and there's no plugin available for heft for doing style linting. Okay, cool. Actually, there will be, as Voitanos is about to publish one. Actually, a bunch of them. So stay tuned. But I want to show you how to do this. Like, I'm using this as a good example. We're saying here's one way you can do it if I just want to do it to one project. I want to run some arbitrary code. I want to use the style lint CLI, or specifically its Node API. I want to use that to actually go do linting, add CSS linting to my, or style linting to my style sheets in my project. So how do I do that? Well, step one for doing that was to first, I had to, oh, that's not what I want to do. Let's not show it that way. Step one, what I did, this is one of the articles that'll be in the docs that'll go live probably later today. No, that's not what I want. Let's just show the code. So on package solution, I'm going to install on dev as a dev dependency. I'm going to install the style lint CLI or npm package and the style config standard SCSS. It's a common thing we use for just all kinds of style linting as different commands. So I'm going to install that first. And then the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add in my configuration for my linter. And so all this says is it's going to extend the configuration that we just installed. This is the plugin that I want to use, and these are the rules that are defined. Now, when I run this, so if I ran this from the command line here, if I just said node, and I've got my, so I said node modules / or dot bin style lint, and I want to look for files in my source folder called SCSS. When I want to run the linter, it's going to find my configuration in the root of my project, and it should find a warning here or an error. BS bull. Is it a SAS file? I'm doing something stupid. Oh, no. I got that wrong. Really, guys? Come on, pair programming. Live demos. Gotta love them. There we go. Found an issue with my SAS file. All right. I want that to be part of my tool chain instead of running the thing locally like that. So how can I get that to work? Well, the way you're going to do this is now that I've got the style linter installed, here's how I'm going to hook it in. While there's no plugin that's available to me, what there is an out-of-the-box plugin available from Heft called the Run Script plugin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go, just like I showed you in the last example, I'm going to go to my heft.json. I'm going to go to I'm going to extend the existing build rig. I'm going to end the phases by name. I'm going to go to the build phase and make a change to it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new task to the build. So remember, I'm extending it. So I'm adding a new task that I want to run after the SAS task completes. The task I'm going to use is called run script. And what it wants is the path to what script it should run. Just run some arbitrary script. So what I did is I then came over here and I created this script. Now this is an ESM or an ECMAScript, an ESM module that I wrote here. And I only did it. The only reason I did it as an ESM module, you can do it. You don't have to do it. The only reason I did it here is because the style linter, the newest version of it, has a bug where it requires you to it dropped support for like the Node.js API, and you need to use ESM modules. So this was the easiest way to do it. I could have done it using JavaScript. There's a way to do it and then like suppress a bunch of deprecations. I could have done it using TypeScript and then had it compile to an ESM module. But I had to first compile the TypeScript to the ESM module before I ran the toolchain. It's just extra work. I could have done it, but I didn't want to do it. So here's what I did. So the way this works is that you define a function that you export from the module called run async. It's going to pass in an options object from the run script. That's going to run my run style lint function that we're going to look at right now. Now, the other thing I did too, just to make sure I could run this script without having to do it through heft, I can also say node go run the stylelint.mjs file, and it would also work. So if I come over here and I look at this script, what is it doing? So what this script does right here is I first check to see were any options passed in. In other words, I'm basically saying, am I in heft or am I outside of heft? Am I running it from node? If I'm inside of heft, I can use their logger to have like the tasks in the phase show up in the prefix. So what I'm going to do is figure out where am I, and I'm going to output the version number of the style lint that I'm using. That's what I normally do, right? That's what I did with ESLint, or that's how Microsoft does it with ESLint, and that's how it does it with TypeScript. It shows the version number of the compilers we're using. So I'm going to do the same. Then I'm going to run ESLint using the configuration file that is in my project from the root of my project, and I'm going to tell it to go filter or go to pass in all these SCSS files into the project. All the code that you see right here, all this is doing is it says, did you find anything? Let's walk through them all. Let's format an error here that's going to write out where the actual error is. So now when I go to my project and I say heft build, we will see that after the SAS process finished, my stylelint task output the current version, and it gave me the error of where my CSS error is, or my style error is. It's not my error, it's Microsoft's error. They're using comments in a bad way, so it's not my fault. I didn't do it. But what else is cool with this is that, check this out. In my heft.json, I can also create my own phase that does whatever I want it to do. So I now can come back over to my command prompt and I can say heft stylelint as just a task that all it does is run my linter. Cool. Let's see. Oh man, got a lot of questions here. I tell you what, let me get through my demos and then I'll answer you guys' questions at the end. I know we're almost at time at like 12 o'clock. I'm going to go over because I guess anybody want me to stop right now? Because I've got some other stuff showing you how to customize Webpack, how the eject thing works. And I think I have one more thing to show you. You guys want to keep going? Let me know. Okay. Next thing I want to show you is, let's see, what else do I have? So we did our code. We did the out of the box. We've done this guy. Oh, okay. Now, what about the other common scenario that we have, which is I want to go modify the Webpack configuration. All right. So check this out. So if I come over here, let's go back and let's look at that out of the box rig. So if I look at this out of the box rig, this was a big thing that Microsoft wasn't doing when I first got involved in this. And I was like, guys, there's a lot of people that modify the Webpack config. And they're like, how many people do you think? And it got to the point, like, there's one of you, you know who you are, and I don't want to call anybody out, but there was one of you I talked to, and I was like, hey, look, am I making a mountain out of a molehill in this? Because it sure feels to me like the people I work with, everybody's making changes to the build tool chain and making changes to Webpack. And I talked to another friend of mine, and I was like, my co-host, Julie Turner, I was like, am I making a big deal about this? And is this really a big deal? And she's like, oh no, everybody does this too. And I'm like, that's what I thought. Like a lot of people don't do it, but the other half of people that do it, they do it a lot. So it'll be a big deal. So come over, let's come over here and look at this. If I go over to, where am I? The build rig, and I look at hef.json, and let's fold this up again. And let's look at the build phase, and let's look at all the tasks that happen in the build phase. So you notice they got this stuff here. They do configure Webpack. There's third-party externals configure Webpack. There's this is the one where it's doing your externals from like config.json when I want to externalize something from my project. It's going through and modifying the config that way. Configuring Webpack serve, that's going to happen in development. Customize the configure Webpack, so there's another change they're making to the very end. But then I told them, I was like, going, you got to give us a way to do this. You got to give us a way to do this. And they're like, because I told them, I was like, the only way we're going to be able to do this if we eject. And if you don't want people ejecting, you got to do something, because I mean, I'm going to tell everybody eject, like eject. It's like a Top Gun movie. So they added in this new package here, this new plugin called Webpack Patch. And what this guy does, I'll let you go through and if you want to look at the details of him. But what this guy does is he says, what the Webpack Patch config does is it says, I'm going to look for a file inside of your config folder called webpack-patch.json. And when I find that file, I'm going to look for an array called patch files. And for every single file you have listed here, I'm going to execute it one by one. If any of you have ever updated, have ever done an edit to to Webpack, check this out. So let me go over here. Let me pull something out of my course. Which one did I do this in? I think it would have been this one. Yep. Does this code look familiar? This is how we used to do it with Gulp. I would go take build.configurewebpack.mergeconfig. I then would call additional configuration and give me the generated config that the SharePoint Framework toolchain had created. I would then mutate it by, in this case here, adding the Webpack bundle analyzer to the plugins collection with the settings that I wanted to define on the plugin. Guess what? This is so easy. Watch how you do this. You're essentially just going to need to copy all of that, all the guts of it. You're going to copy it all out. And what are you going to do? You're going to create this new file here. You can put this file wherever you want in your project. To me, it makes most sense. It's going to go in config because it's part of my build toolchain. If I'm using an existing plugin, I use the name of the plugin minus the dash plugin on the end, just to keep things sorted. So I'm going to create that JavaScript file called Webpack Bundle Analyzer. First step that I had to do was come down here into package.json and install the Webpack Bundle Analyzer into my project. Second step that I'm going to do, come back over here into this JavaScript file, and I'm going to implement a single function that is a single default function that is exported by the module that's going to give me the Webpack config. And what am I going to do? I'm literally doing the exact same code that I did using Gulp. And at the very end, I'm just going to write it out. I'm going to give it back to the caller so that now when I go run this in my project, I say, not Gulp. Oh, there's some muscle memory for you. I need to map Gulp to Heft. Heft build. Oh, wait, sorry. Oh, yeah. Because it's part of the build phase, notice it was already going to get picked up. I didn't have to configure anything because the plugin that is already installed in the default rig is looking for that patch file. So when I say build, it runs, keeps going. Now, let's come back up here a little bit. It doesn't normally do this. That's a logging thing that I have. you can see here, the Webpack patch plugin is applying a patch file. So, and then it said, here's the Webpack version. So what did it do? I said, I wanted my stats for Webpack Bundle Analyzer to go in the temp/Webpack, and I want them to be called buildstats.html and buildstats.json. Ta-da! Now you have a Webpack. Now you can go through and you can do your plugins there, and you can have as many of these as you want. So just drop in that script, add in the patch file, done. All those are going to work. You have full access to the entire config. And if you don't want, like, this is why you were seeing that big thing of like the Webpack config. That's just my debugging when I was writing the article. All right. But wait, I've shown you all this stuff, right? And if you're one of those people that is thinking about your configuration and customizations you've done now, specifically things that you've done to Webpack, all right? I want you to take a step back and I want you to think and say, has what he's shown me, can I achieve it with the stuff that Andrew's shown me today? And if the answer is yes, cool. If the answer is no, I want to know why. Not because I want to know why, but Microsoft wants to know why. Because so far, everything we've come up with, we have been able to figure out how to get those configurations done using the stuff that has been provided. If you can't, then we want to know where that edge case is that's not being addressed. Now, my argument to you is you should be able to do it using like the run script plugin, right? Or building your own custom plugin. I'll talk about that later. But if you can't, and you say, look, while you guys are figuring it out, what are my other options? There is a nuclear option. The nuclear option is to say, I want to eject the entire build configuration from the current rig, and I want to put it in my project, and I don't want you to generate the web config files. I want dynamically, I want you to let me modify them myself. This is called the eject option. All right. Now, a couple things I want to tell you about. Well, I'll tell you about them at the very end. Here's how it works. So I've already ejected this project. So what does it look like when you eject? All right. After you eject, I want you to look at all of these changes that are going to happen to your project. First of all of the purple stuff is going to get deleted. Config.json, gone. Rig.json, gone, because we're not pointing to a rig anymore. SAS.json, gone. Why? Because the configuration is going to be added to our heft configuration. Serve.json, gone. TypeScript.json, gone. Webpack write manifest, gone. Remember, this is one of those things. We're going to give you full control, but with great control, or with great control comes big responsibility. I totally bastardized that, but you know the Superman face. This will also, there's a trivial change in your web parts. That's just how things are being referenced with the resource files. But yo-rc.json is going to keep track of the fact that it was ejected, but frankly, that's irrelevant. It doesn't really matter because it doesn't really tell you anything. It will generate 2 Webpack configuration files. One of them is used for production. One of them is used for dev. The dev one is the one that spins up like the dev web server for Webpack, expects local hosting, blah, blah, blah. But check this out. Package.json. Interesting. So they remove clean. I don't know why. I've asked about that, and that might be removed in the release candidate, but check this out. On the dev dependencies, here's the big stuff right here. Look at this. Basically, the entire tool chain is being moved into your project. The SAS loader, the style loader, the TS loader, all these loaders, those are all used by Webpack. The SAS compiler, the web server it uses, the Node.js Express web service that it uses to go spin up the local web server. The package it uses to support cross-origin resource sharing from our local web server to SharePoint Online when we're testing our stuff out. the Webpack plugin for Hef, the dev certs for trusting and untrusting, the TypeScript plugin for compiling, the Sass plugin for compiling stuff, the Jest plugin for testing, the linter, the module interfaces doesn't change. It just adds a comma on the end. A lot of stuff changes here. A lot of stuff changes. So this, what it does, it generates these big files here. Okay, so what am I left with? You're left with a pretty slim config folder. Rig is gone, Heft is here, and this Heft JSON is the same Heft that we got from the rush stack, from the default profile. But what's different about it is that all of the options are embedded inside of this, and all the Webpack stuff is for creating the configuration file. It's all gone. All right, so if I come over here and I go, faces my name, build, right? You see under the task for build, it simply runs Webpack. It doesn't generate the config because it's already generated it. And if you want to change it, you can do that. Like if I'm on config.json, I can then come down here and I can import the Webpack bundle analyzer, and then I can find where make sure I get this. It's not this one. It's not that one. There we go. Where it's creating in the method called get SPFx Webpack config, is passing in the plugins. And what I do is I go to the very end after all the plugins are created and I add in the same Webpack bundle analyzer. So now when I do my build for this guy, and notice over here in the temp folder, not there, I say gulp. Oh God, I did it again. Heft build. So many times I do that in a demo. And I look under temp. There are my stats files. So what happens if, as I'm building my project and I go to make a change to add externalize a new package that I'm using from and use a CDN instead? I got to go manually put that in here inside of my Webpack configuration files, both the dev one and the production one. What if I don't know, other stuff that you can think of here. What if I want to make those changes? You're responsible for doing it all yourself. Here's the thing I want to warn you about ejecting. All right. Now I'm going to be a little forceful in how I say this. In the docs, it's a little bit softer. And if you talk to Microsoft, they're a little bit softer. If you eject, number one, it's a one-way operation. You cannot go back. All right. You cannot go back. The only way you can go back, source control or undo what you did. Not easy to do. It's tedious. So make sure you've got source control with it. All right. So number one, it's a one-way operation. Number two, if you do that, future updates to the SharePoint framework that have new tool chain updates, you won't get the benefit of any of them. You won't get the benefit of any of that stuff because you basically said, I use my own tool chain here. I use my own. I don't think it's a good idea. Let's see, what else do you have? 3, because you've done that, no support from Microsoft. Now, with that being said, they're like, we don't want to say we're just going to cut you off. But if they're like, if you go through and you do your own configuration and you're like, I'm having trouble with my config here, don't expect them to put you to say going, hey, look, this isn't, you're doing something totally custom. You're on your own. You got to figure that out. We're not here to do custom dev support here. So they're like, if you go through and do this, you're on your own. So essentially, the way I like to think about this, and it's kind of a bad example because it's software compared to hardware, but you're voiding a warranty when you do this, all right, with your tool chain. It's like the equivalent of saying, I just bought a brand new car and I decided to, lift it up and put bigger wheels on it and spread the wheels out and have it go like one of those cars that kind of gets up on 3 wheels or something like that. There's no way that Ford is going to say, yep, you're still under warranty. They're like, nope, sorry. You took the engine out and put a different engine in? Yeah, we don't stand behind that. Go for it. Cool trick, bro. But we don't stand behind that. So Don, good question here, says, so ejecting doesn't change anything. It just installs the entire rig in the project so you can change anything. Yeah, essentially what it does is it takes the fact that your project is the entire build tool chain is externalized from your project by default, and it's all encapsulated within a package. When you eject, you basically say two things. One, I want all of that in my project. That's number one. Number two, don't dynamically generate the Webpack config. Just go ahead and build it one time, and I'll go through and handle it from there on out. That's effectively what it does, right? Personally, I'm not very afraid of going through and doing a Webpack eject, but it's a lot more code maintenance on my side. And who knows what I'm going to be missing out on in the future, any benefits that they make, right? So I personally am not a fan of that. I'm personally not a fan of doing that option, but it's up to you if you end up wanting to do it. All right. Okay, I think that's everything. That's all my samples. So I went through the eject option. We went through the style linter, the out of the box with copy files. That's just an out of the box project. That's the migration. And that is the Webpack bundle analyzer as a plugin. Cool. What do you guys think? You like, you don't like? Okay, let me do a couple of wrap up things, and then I will go through. I see a bunch of stuff that's happened here in the chat on YouTube, and I just see a bunch of questions in the chat left and right. So I want to go through and I want to run through some of these questions and try and answer them if you've got anything. So if you do have a question, you can post them in the chat now, and I'll get through them. So before I do that though, let me just cover a couple things here. So first of all, when it comes to our office hours, the office hours for December, I was going to do this yesterday. I was like, probably don't do this because it might confuse people about today's. We're not going to do office hours in December. Two reasons. One is I'm actually delivering a live workshop on Copilot extensibility and building declarative agents using the Agents Toolkit. It's a 3-day workshop that's happening December 16th, 17th, and 18th. You can get it for $50 off if you're an early bird registration. It is at the same time. And so I had to cancel. I was going to have to move our office hours. And the only option I had to move it was like a day or two before Christmas. And I know a lot of people wouldn't be working then. And frankly, I want to take the week off, the last 2 weeks off. So we're just going to skip. I'm not going to do a December office hours. So the next office hours will be in January. But I do have 2 workshops coming up. So I have a workshop coming up in, wait a minute. I think the dates for that are wrong. Crap. The dates for that are wrong. I should have meant to fix that. This workshop or this webinar is next Thursday. This webinar is next Thursday. So if you, I believe it's next, no, it's not next Thursday. It's next Tuesday. Next Thursday is Thanksgiving in the United States. So this webinar is on, sorry about this. I totally forgot to update those dates. I had to reschedule it due to some things. Actually, I was going to do this webinar. It was supposed to be last week. That's why you saw the other one was supposed to be on the 11th. It's supposed to be last Tuesday, but let's just say there's a reason why I wanted to do this webinar after Ignite, wink, wink. So this will be a week from today. And this is all about using, creating declarative agents using type spec, which is a DSL for creating, instead of writing all the JSON and YAML. I have another webinar coming up that is on December the 9th, that this date you see right here, and sorry about this, these QR codes go to it though, we'll go to the right spot. It is all about evaluating your M365 Copilot agent options. So do you want to use SharePoint agents, Agent Builder, which is now known as Copilot Studio Lite, Copilot Studio Full, or declarative agents using the Agents Toolkit for VS Code? So I got these 2 webinars that are coming up, and I've got my live Copilot workshop also coming up in the middle of December. All right. And if you are on my newsletter, you will find out later this week about all the special deals and promotions that I'm running for our end of the year promotion. Everything is going to be for the first day will be 42% off, because I mean, come on, 42, it's a perfect number, right? Anybody else get it? I hope so. A bunch of developers, I think, are in the room. And if you guys don't get it, please don't say you don't get it. So that's one. And then the other, and then everything else, there'll also be after that, everything will also be discounted, but not as much as 42%. They'll be discounted by 30%. And I've got 2 new workshops coming up in January and February that'll also be part of the sale. And there's also an extra bonus for people who register. They can be eligible to be entered into getting a free hour of coaching with me, which is a $500 value. Okay, so let me run through some of these questions here. So I'm going to start with the ones I got in Voitanos Learn and answer your questions that pop up first. Just scroll back real quick, scan through this. I see someone named Razvan said, you won't pop the champagne just yet. We wouldn't know if it's less of a headache as compared to gulp, meaning heft. You ever catch me like not being recorded? Ask me what the code names were for this that I had for this part because we didn't know what to call it. Now we're calling it like the gulp tool chain, the gulp-based tool chain and the heft-based tool chain, where the gulp-based one is legacy. You'll see that referred to in the docs. I had different names for it that I won't share in the recording. Don had a question about CLI. That one's addressed. Eric said the TS config JSON is updated. Will you be able to customize compiler options? Yes, you can, because as I said, it's extended, so you can add your own stuff to it to override the properties from the one that you extended. Anthony says, well, do we have the ability to hook into before a phase like we can today? Kinda. Yes and kind of and yes. So there is a concept of hooks when it comes to heft. If you look at the heft docs, they talk about it. I'm working on a plugin right now that's actually going to use that. I have a few, like I'm gonna publish a couple plugin packages, one for just heft and then one for heft used in SPFx projects. One of those is going to have a plugin for the Webpack bundle analyzer. And my plan is to say, like, instead of having to write that patch file thing, I want to do this in every one of my projects. So I just want to be able to say, create my project, npm install @Voitanos / the plugin package. And then you'll have a task that you just add in, and it has a default configuration, but that you can override the configuration if you want for your projects, or point to your own options file that you want to use. And that way it'll be more reusable. I'm doing that for whenever Webpack runs, so I don't have to do, it's a little bit easier for it to set it up. But there is a concept there's a way to go through and to do that, to have hooks. It just gets it's a little complicated. One of the things we're really trying to do with this update, and I say we being me working with Microsoft, we're trying to think. I've been really pushing them for this, and we're all doing this now, or they're in alignment. We're both doing it. When it comes to the docs and official guidance, we don't want to include things in the docs that are not SharePoint specific. So, for example, you will not see in the docs how to create a custom heft plugin. It has nothing to do with SPFx. It's a heft thing. We don't need to teach heft in the SPFx docs. Now, my goal is that later this week, I'm going to have an article that says, hey, you know that style linter? Here's how you do it as a custom plugin. And I'll have that as part of my package. But I have a bunch of other plugins that I've already started working on that I will have as well. And they will use, and some of them use that hook concept to where they hook into a phase. And so I can just say, hey, when this whole build phase is happening, when this patch phase is happening, I want you to go through and to run this one. So you have a little more control. So there is a little bit of a concept of a hook. You said though, what if I want to, like when you said, do you have the ability to hook into a before a phase like we can today? So I'm not entirely sure, but thinking about this another way is that you could have a task that you add to a phase, but you want that task to run first compared to all the other ones. So for example, let's say that on the package solution, here, let me go back to my demo here. This is a great question. So hopefully people are still around. You haven't tuned out yet. Now I'm not going to run this. I'm just going to, I don't know if it's going to, I don't know. I don't want to try and like do like live, too extending to live coding here, but let's see, which one was this? Copy files. Okay. So remember this one when I was updating the package solution phase and I want my copy license to happen after the package solution task. And the reason I did that is because if I look at the rig, let's go look at the rig config. Okay, so here's the package solution phase. And right now it's only got one task in it called package solution that you see there defined on line 149. So right now in my project, I'm adding a second task that says after that one runs, then I want you to run my copy task, my copy license one. But what if I wanted copy license to happen first? So you can do that. You only have the ability to define the dependencies. So how would I get around this? Well, what I would do is go over to the out-of-the-box package solution. I'd copy the whole thing. Don't delete it, don't make any changes to it because we're inheriting from it or I'm extending it. So I'm simply going to overwrite it. So what this did is this just added in the copy license. And what I'm going to do now is say, I'm going to use the same description for this phase. Oh, I guess it's not allowed. Oh, wait, it's because it's going to go right here. I'm going to use the same description for this phase because I'm going to overwrite what is currently there. So, and actually, I don't even really need to say the description. I can leave that alone. But I'm going to have, I'll add package solution here the same way it was before, but this time I'm going to take the dependency and I'm going to take copy license and have it be why aren't you like that? What am I doing? Where is that? Where was that? Where did I just take that from? Yes, it is. Oh, it's because it's supposed to go up here. So I'll take you from here. I'll put you here. Hold on, no, tasks. Oh, put you here. Basically what I do is I change the phase so that my new task is the first one that runs. So you basically have to rewire what's currently there. All right. So you're like, do I have to do that for the entire phase? Not really, because if you think if there's one that's at the beginning and everybody else is dependent on him, then really all you have to do is add your task and then take the first one that everybody else depends on, copy it into your project's hef.json and change his dependency to be your new task that you added. And now everybody else is going to depend on the same one, but that same one they depend on is dependent upon yours that you added. So hopefully that answers your question. People liked it. Haven't done any customizations with gulp, so hopefully it'll be simple and switch to heft. Yeah. Oh, you really won't. Yeah, but you just have to go through the migration of your project to get rid of the gulp toolchain, Eric, and then add in, and that's it. Oh, sorry. You have to get rid of the gulp toolchain, add in the heft toolchain. You have a couple of files you have to go modify and delete gulpfile.js, and you're done. That'll be your easy migration. And actually, the CLI that Adam is working on should fix it. Should do that for you, I would assume. Sorry, not to speak for you, Adam, but hopefully that does it. Keep going down. Alex said it was gulp the reason we can't jump to React 18. No, it's just that they've just, no, that's not the reason. So I see it's been harder for them to get done. And when they make that change, that says that all of SharePoint Online supports React 18 and they weren't ready for it yet. So I will be honest that there was a debate about, I think that there was a discussion about putting the upgrade to React 18 inside the 1.22 release. I was one of, but not the only one, that fought very hard not to do that. As much as I want React 18, frankly, I don't want React 19, but I fought very hard for this release to just be about the tool chain because it's such a big change. So that's that. Don says, do you need the task plugin since it's not changing? Just add the dependency based on what I did right here. I believe you do, because when you change package solution, I'm changing the entire object. I'm overwriting the object. And so I don't think I could just say like, this should not be valid. Yeah, so it's not going to be valid because it's missing a property that is required. So that would not work. Okay, so let me go over here to YouTube. Actually, I should have everything over here in StreamYard. So let's go back. Ooh, a lot of questions. Let's see. Let me scroll through these. Anthony asked, if we customize the TS config, can we override it? Yes, you can extend it. I talked about that. Adam talked about the installing Heft globally and locally. I took care of that. Adam said, yes. You're working on updating the SharePoint Framework project upgrade command to support 1.22. That's going to be some work, but good luck, guys. I'm glad that somebody's doing that. That's it. Awesome. Thanks, Adam. I see what you said. It was a good update. Awesome. I appreciate that. I know I went 30 minutes over. I know I've lost a handful of people that were watching. I didn't lose as many as I thought. Anybody got any other questions before we wrap up? I don't see anybody raising their hands. All right. The next office hours is going to be in January. Thank you guys, everybody, guys and gals. Thank you very much for joining me. If you watched on the recording, we really missed you live. I missed you live. There's a hole in my heart that you weren't there. But as you watch the recordings, it'll fill it up. I appreciate that. Keep an eye on the docs. Hopefully those will all be updated and be live later today. If not, they'll probably be live by tomorrow. And if you find anything, if there is, again, if there was any customization thing that you do to your tool chain that is not covered in this, let us know. Let me know. Drop a comment on anywhere you've watched this recording. Drop a comment in the issue list to let Microsoft know, because it'll come back to me as well for the docs. Just look at the docs that are there and give me feedback on it. As I said, when it comes to the docs, there's a few things that we intentionally kept kind of light, because I expect we're going to get feedback, and I want to make sure that we don't try and are too rigid with everything. But every one of those scenarios that I walk through today, it walks you through those scenarios one by one when you in those docs, everything that I covered there. And there's a lot more kind of explanation for it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up. I don't think anybody else is here. So everybody, thank you very much for sticking around today. I hope this is good. And if you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Please drop a comment in there. Let me know if you liked it. Share it on socials or whatever. You really don't know how much of an impact that really has on helping get the word out to other people. So do free stuff like this. You do try and help get the word out and stuff, and it just greatly be appreciated. So with that, thanks a lot. And I hope everybody has, Joachim, awesome. I didn't really, nice handle. Didn't recognize you. Thank you very much, everybody. And I hope everyone has a great holiday season. If I don't see you till then, and if you're going to be at SBC, reach out. I'd love to chat and enjoy Ignite. Although, don't expect anything from the SharePoint framework. There's nothing in Ignite. Nothing in Ignite. All right. Bye, everybody.